All right, I guess we'll go ahead. Oh, somebody else just popped in. We will go ahead and get started, and everyone who is joining us can just pop in when they can. I'm going to go ahead and introduce everyone as we start our webinar. And so you will notice that this is a webinar format. And so if you do have any questions as we go through this presentation, please put your question into the chat, and all of the panelists in this presentation have access to the chat, and we'll be able to answer your questions at the end of the presentation. And then, so please, any questions that you have, enter that into the chat, and we'll be happy to answer your questions at the end of the presentation. So introductions. First, I'm Angela Flavin. I'm the second and third grade learning community leader. This is my 23rd year, and I forgot how many times I've been a part of this presentation, but very, very versed in the world of FSA. And then I would like to introduce Miss Natalie Andrews. Miss Andrews, will you say hello?
Hi, y'all. I'm Natalie Andrews. I'm a third grade teacher, and this is my 5th year, I believe, teaching third grade. So also pretty well versed.
All right. Next is Mrs. Kaylee Downing.
Hi, everybody. This is my 3rd year, I believe, teaching 3rd grade and being involved with FSA. So yeah, thanks.
And then we have Miss Neil Young.
Hi, everybody. I'm Neil. This is also my 3rd year teaching 3rd grade.
Okay, and then we have some amazing resources with us this evening. We have our guidance counselor, Bryce.
Hi, everyone. This is my 2nd year in elementary, and this is a fun time of year. So I hope I can provide some support and help out.
Awesome. And then rounding out our team tonight is Ashley Hill.
Hi, everybody. I'm Ashley Pennypacker Hill. I am our Director of Student and Family Services, and I am just happy to be with everybody and love the opportunity to work with these amazing teachers and counselors and you all.
All right, well, here we go. Oh, it doesn't like that, so I'll do, no, it doesn't like that either. So I'm gonna do, here we go. There we go, okay. So tonight's presentation is going to focus mostly on the reading aspect of the FSA, because that's kind of where the critical part of what our state focuses on. Here are the dates for the Florida Standards Assessment for this school year. So the reading assessment will take place on 2 separate days, April 5th and April 7th. So we have 2 different sessions, and math will take place, we're thinking probably May 3rd and May 5th. And so what the FSA is essentially, it's a paper-based test that measures the student's achievement towards Florida standards in both English language arts and math. Okay. All right.
Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about an overview of what we do for FSA preparation. We do a lot of different things to help prepare your student for the FSA, and a lot of the work starts even in kindergarten. These are the 4 main areas that we focus on as we prepare our students. We find one of the trickiest things for students while preparing for the FSA is building their stamina. Sitting for an 80-minute test session requires a lot of practice. We begin building stamina by starting off slowly and working towards increasing the length and complexity of the task. Later, we'll talk a little bit more in depth about the activities that we do to build stamina. And we'll start sending home some FSA homework that we'll talk a little bit more about as well. Okay, and comprehension practice. Our curriculum that we use with the students is the Center for Collaborative Classroom, Making Meaning, and this focuses on reading comprehension and vocabulary. Every day, students are exposed to a read aloud where we work on specific comprehension strategies as a class. Students then practice using these strategies during their independent reading time. As a tiered support, some students have been using our Head Sprout program, and this program teaches students how to analyze multiple choice questions into 4 main categories. The categories are find the fact, clue word, mostly about, and vocabulary. And we've found that students are more successful in answering questions when they better understand what the question is asking them to do. And every 3rd grade student attends a small reading group that focuses on reading skills that are specific to their needs. In these small groups, your student will also be exposed to FSA practice. And lastly, teachers confer with students during their independent reading time. And during this time, your student receives one-on-one reading comprehension support. So now we're going to start talking about test taking strategies.
Okay, so we have found a tremendous amount of success with kind of showing the children how to mark their text and just kind of proving where they're finding their evidence to answer what a question is asking them to find out. And on the next slide, I'll kind of show you what that looks like. So many years ago, we kind of developed what we call the rule strategy. And the rule strategy is this. So for R, we ask them to read the passage carefully. There is a significant amount of time available for the assessment. And so there's no reason to rush through the passage and just kind of skim through it, just trying to get to the questions. There is time available for them to read it very carefully. And then the U is, once they do get to the questions, is to really understand, okay, what is the question truly asking me to find out? Once they understand what the question is asking them to find out, we're asking them, or we're going to train them in the book clubs that Ms. Young just mentioned, we're going to train them to look for evidence in the text that matches what the question is asking. And then finally, we're going to look at each of those answer choices and we're going to examine which answer best fits what the question is asking. These test developers are very tricky with putting in maybe one of those answer choices that does happen in the story, but it's not necessarily what the question is asking them to find out. And so we're going to work really hard to have your child recognize, oh, okay, that might be in the story, but is that really what the question is asking them to find out? So the rule strategy is going to be something that you're going to become very familiar with. It's going to be coming home on all the homework. Your student is going to be very familiar with it. It's going to be taught in lessons. It's going to be heard in book club. It'll be on all of the homework. And it's something that we have had tremendous success in all of our years in doing this, that really helps the student understand how to answer these questions and how to go back into the text and really looking for that, that evidence to answer their questions. So here's kind of what it looks like when they are looking for that evidence. Here's an example of one of our stories that we do in book club. It's called A Race to the Rescue. And so if we're looking for, here's question 3. It says, which sentence from the passage shows why it was important to get medicine to Nome quickly? Okay, and so we're looking for why it was important. And so we might even code the question. We might even think, okay, what are we really looking for? Well, we want to know why it was important. Okay, and so we're thinking we want to get, why do we need to get medicine to Nome quickly? And then we go back into the text and we're really looking for, well, the disease was a grave threat to the children who live there. And another thing we do is we kind of think through each of our answers. And on the opposite side of where we might mark which answer we choose, we code it. And if we think it could be a good answer for that question, we'll put an M for maybe. But if we can really eliminate that possible answer, we put an X next to it. You're thinking, yeah, that really doesn't match what the question is asking us to find out. Typically, we're able to narrow it down to 2 maybes and sometimes even just 1 maybe. And then that helps us really analyze what the right answer might be. Okay. Now, when we're looking for the right evidence, we don't necessarily want to underline every single line. We were looking for very specific evidence. And so if you are working with your child at home and they just start to underline every single line, then try to help them narrow down, what exactly did the question ask you? And help them kind of just get more specific with what the question was asking them. Okay. Being able to box certain questions, being able to underline certain things that really helps them focus on what that question is asking them is really important while they're kind of looking back and forth, because the questions might be on one page while the text is on the other page. So if they do have to go back and forth, it's helpful just to kind of help them know exactly what they're looking for. Okay.
So now we're going to move on to stamina building. That's something that Ms. Young touched on earlier at the beginning of the presentation. So when we talk about stamina building, something that's important to understand about the FSA that might, kind of be difficult for students at first is that this is a larger test that's broken into 2 80-minute sessions. So when we take it day 1, that's 80 minutes. Day 2, that's another 80 minutes. So that's something that our students have to adjust to reading, text and passages for that long, and also sitting and kind of being engaged for that amount of time. So we're going to accomplish this in a couple ways, and there's some ways that you can support it at home too. So the first way that we're looking to support that stamina to build kind of their resilience towards sitting and reading for that long amount of time, first is by doing daily IDR, that's independent daily reading. So of course in school and class that they've been doing, for their entire time while they've been here at PK, that's them taking, books, fiction or nonfiction of their interest, and sitting and reading, sustained for up to 20 to 30 minutes. So even that is just great practice of just, I am focused solely on my reading for this amount of time without really having a lot of other distractions or getting up and doing a lot of other activities. Next down, so in our book clubs, as we start to prepare for FSA, we're going to gradually build up their stamina as we go through those book clubs. So we'll start out with doing one passage with some questions. So they're going to adjust to what that's like to read that one passage and answer the questions that go with it, how that feels to sit and focus on doing that passage followed by the questions. And then we'll build our way to 2 passages or a paired passage, also with some questions to build them, to get to that point where, okay, I can sit, I can sustain, read this, and get my questions done. Ways to support this at home, first being a big one is reading at home. So anything that is of interest to them is great. If you, I know if you need help with some suggestions, I'm sure we can help provide some suggestions for you if you need ideas of what might be interesting for your child at home. I tend to recommend 20 to 30 minutes a day of home reading. I think that's a great place to start. And if you're able to build up in little chunks up to that point, that can be a good place to begin. As they're reading though, we want to support them with their thinking as they read. So we don't want it to just kind of be an idle activity. So we want them to be thinking about what they're reading. If their thinking goes astray. So for example, maybe you ask them questions about, well, what were the characters doing or what happened in your story? If they're not really able to retell with a lot of accuracy, we might want to say, well, maybe we ought to go back and check that again. In class, we call that a self-monitoring strategy. It's more of just questions for students to ask themselves, okay, well, maybe I zoned out, maybe I need to recheck, well, what were the characters doing, or what was the problem, or what did I learn from this section? And then last but not least, when we're reading, when we're building stamina, we really want to think right now about, don't worry too much about the time, just stay focused, and we're going to build it up as we go. It is a gradual process. We're not going to be all the way up to the top of 80 minutes right away. So we're just going to stay focused and build up their stamina as we go throughout these next several weeks. Okay. And then next up is their familiarity with the question styles that they're going to see on FSA. Like Mrs. Flavin mentioned, the FSA, those test makers can be kind of tricky sometimes. And so as we go through these next several weeks with homeworks, within class practices, we're going to be exposing them to the question styles that they're going to see on the FSA exam. So they use known words, prompts, different types of question styles for each question. So for example, and we're going to look at some actual examples in a second, but it may ask them to select a sentence from an article that demonstrates a concept, an idea, something that was important in what they read. It might ask them, what does the author suggest by saying, by writing, by using the phrase? Several questions will be part A, part B. So for example, it might ask them in part A to choose a statement that best says the main idea of the article. Part B oftentimes will ask them to choose their evidence that supports that this is the main idea of the article. As for that rule, strategy is very important and comes in as if they've gone in and underlined their evidence and they've already figured out what their supports are and what evidence they have. Those part Bs become a lot easier. So we're going to be working with those question styles in class, like I said, on homeworks and small groups. So by the time we come and see those on the FSA test, they'll be a lot more familiar to your students. And then of course, like Mrs. Flavin mentioned, we want to make sure that your students know what the question is asking them to do. So if it is like that part A question that's asking them for the main idea of the article, they are understanding, okay, I need to think about all of what I read and think about what all of it has to do with, and what is it that truly told me that this is what the main idea of this article is. And I think we're going to look at some examples here next.
All right, so the examples that we're going to look at, I kind of want to say this up front. There's a lot of text and it can seem pretty daunting when we first see them, but we want to show you these for a couple of reasons. One is that it's important to know what your child's going to see. And so that way you can be helping them as much as possible. But also that way you kind of can know what's coming up and how to build up that stamina for them. So we're just going to show a couple different question types that are part of that we have seen on the FSA. So for example, in this one, they're asking the student to fill in the circle that comes before. So there you can see within the passage, there are bubbles, A, B, C, and D, that come before a sentence, and they're choosing the sentence from passage 2 that shows why the man believes that his cheeses can bring themselves to the market. So they have to kind of break this down in different ways. So they need to know where they're able to choose. They need to know that they're looking in passage 2, that's what they're focused on. And then they need to understand what are they trying to choose from passage 2, locate that correct sentence, and then make sure that they're choosing the bubble that comes before that sentence. So a couple different steps just within that one question. Kind of tackle this and learn how to navigate that. You can go to the next one. So this is an example of what Mrs. Downing was saying about the part A and part B questions. So for this, in order to get the question correct, part A needs to be correct so that they can correctly answer part B. So part A is asking which sentence describes the man's feeling at the end of passage 2. So they'll need to go back to passage 2, remember how the man is feeling, find that evidence, come back, answer part A, and then part B is kind of like a cause and effect. So now they're also finding out what happens in the passage because of the man's feelings that you answered in part A. So go back, okay, I chose this one. What happens because I chose that one? And then answer part B. So this is another one that can seem kind of confusing when you first look at it. So this likely, is likely a sequencing question is when we see these a lot. So it's asking them to put in order the steps that the ants take to leave their homes during the flood. So if they build a new nest is the last one, then in that line, they'd have to line it up and make sure they're choosing C finally for that first one. And then if they move food in each other is the second thing that happens, then that would be next. So they'd choose E for that one, line that up, and then they stick their bodies together. If that's the first step, they'd choose G, which is lines up to be first. So they're having to sequence the events from that part of the passage, and then make sure that they're accurately filling in the bubble that goes along with that as well. And they're only meant to choose 3 bubbles in all, 1 per line, but we kind of have to teach them just that process. All right, and then this question is asking, you can see it's in bold, 2 reasons that the author included something. And so we see that a lot, that it's bolded, and we are going to have to help teach them to really pay attention to that, because without 2 answers, that would be an incorrect answer. So even if you chose 1 and it's the correct one, they're asking for 2 reasons, and not more than 2, just 2. So that's another thing that we're going to have to just kind of get them to realize and be aware of, and start kind of honing in on while we're doing this kind of work. All right, so one of the things that you all can help us with is we're going to be doing a lot of things at school, and we have been preparing them, but we do need some extra help from you all. And so FSA homework, I know we don't often send home homework, and so this is going to be something new and different for you all at home, and we're so appreciative of you all for doing this with us. Homework will be coming home on Mondays, and this is going to begin next Monday, January 31st. So it'll be sent home on the 1st, that Monday, and it's due the following Monday. So we are going to, when it comes back on that following Monday, review it and correct it as a class. It's not going to be a big public thing for everybody, but we do want the student to kind of see how it's going, and we want you all to see how it's going, but we also want to correct any misconceptions, and just the more exposure they have to these reading at longer passages, answering questions, seeing different question types, things like that, the better prepared that they will be. So Mrs. Downing said, home reading is a huge thing that you all can be doing at home, and this is considered home reading, and so it's definitely going to help with stamina. So if this takes you and your student 2, 3, 4, 5 days to get through, that's okay. Working on it a little bit at a time to build up that stamina is good, and it'll start with 1 or 2 passages in the homework, and we'll build that as well as the time gets closer to FSA. Also, this is a great time where we aren't discussing the reading and the questions through, like, in the middle of the test or in the middle of a simulation, for you to work alongside your student and be discussing the reading and the questions with them. We're not expecting your student to just go off on their own and complete it all the way and then turn it in, and that's the end. We want this to be a back and forth conversation with you all as you're going through it. We don't often require homework, but this is required. It's so important that they bring it back and they can participate in this conversation with their classmates on Mondays.
All right, thank you, Ms. Andrews. And again, we can't say that part enough, and that every piece that we're mentioning tonight is a huge part in building their stamina. And so please, this homework part is just a critical piece in helping build their stamina, and you right by their side, cheering them on and working with them is such a motivation, and just a wonderful time. Knowing that you're right there with them, helping them work through this process is just really very valuable in this whole process. So thank you in advance for working with them and just being their little cheerleader as they work through this. There's other things that are available for you to just kind of peek and see what the FSA assessment looks like. The FSAassessments.org does offer a kind of like a practice test. We don't necessarily suggest that you your child take this practice test. This is just more for your for you to look at and just kind of understand, like, okay, I kind of see now what this my child is going to go through now. So you're welcome to go to that link and kind of check out. So when you do go to there, it kind of pops over to obviously the hyperlink won't work when you get this paper copy, but I think if we email it to you, it will work. Is it gonna go? There we go. Okay. And if you just go on your own, it is the grade 3 FSA ELA. And so you can kind of see, there we go. So you can kind of see the passages, you can kind of see, so yes, there are sometimes there's more than one passage, and how the questions look like what Miss Andrews was showing you. Okay. All right, let me slide this down. Go back to that. Okay. And what we'd like to do is just to kind of give you a little bit more information about working with your child. We would like to show you just a quick video. A couple years ago, Blake Beckett and her daughter were both in 3rd grade, and they made a short kind of model for us on just kind of what that kind of side-by-side coaching sounds like and looks like. So we would like to just quickly show that to you. And I want to remind you too, for the families that are just maybe joined us a little bit late, if you have any questions about what we're talking about or just things that pop into your mind, please use the chat feature in our Zoom box to ask any questions. And at the end, we will be able to answer any of those for you. Okay. All right. So here is Mrs. Beckett and her daughter Bailey working through one of the homeworks. There we go.
All right, Bailey, we're ready for FSA.
Oh, okay. There we go.
So looking at this text, what kind of a text do you think that is? It doesn't look like a story to me. What does it look like to you? Paragraphs? I do see paragraphs, yeah, those spaces between there, but look at this little part right here where it says, Dear Principal Becker. And there's the date, and look down here at the bottom, it says Best, Simone Anderson. So what do you think that is? A letter. It is, I think it's a letter too. All right, my dear, we're gonna go ahead and read this first paragraph. When you stop at the word others, just look at me and we're gonna talk about if there's any hard words and what it's mostly about, okay? All right.
I understand that school is meant for learning. It is important to have good reading skills and to be able to solve math problems. But I think school is also important for another reason. It helps people learn to get along with others.
All right, were there any hard words in that paragraph for you?
Not really.
Okay. What do you think reading skills means?
I think reading skills means kind of like reading skills is like going back, like if you don't understand a word and you don't like have a teacher to help you, then you use your reading skills to read ahead, and if you don't find any clues there that can help you understand that word, then you read back.
Okay. So what was that paragraph mostly about? Like this person, Simone Anderson, is writing a letter. What is she writing about?
In this paragraph, I think she's writing about maybe like how important school is.
I agree. At the beginning, she talks about it's important for reading and math, but here at the end of the paragraph, what is it that she also thinks is really important?
That it helps people learn to get along with others.
Okay, so maybe that's what she's talking about. So you read that one out loud.
Okay. All right. Let me get back to, oh goodness, hold on. Technical difficulties. Would figure I would close my whole drive. Hold on one second, everybody. Okay, it's hard to believe that that little girl is a high schooler now. All right. So you can kind of just see how mom and daughter were just kind of going back and forth, working together, and just a very low key, no pressure kind of relationship. And it was just a very sweet partnership. Okay, so we're loading back now. All right. There we go. Okay. Okay. Thank you for your patience. Okay. All right. So when we get to the testing days, the actual testing days, we have a lovely little system that we have in place. We welcome the kids in. We just kind of have like a very chill vibe going on in the room. We provide like a little buffet for the kids. We certainly want you to provide breakfast for them at home, but we also kind of have some snacks available for them. We will send a sign-up system home where we request maybe some string cheese, some goldfish, graham crackers, just some little things for them to munch on as we're getting ready for the test to start. And so we always appreciate, and you guys are always so great about sending things in for that. So be on the lookout for that as we get closer to the assessment time in April. And we typically start around 8:30 a.m. And as we've mentioned, the sessions are 80 minutes. In the directions, the state does allow for a stretch break in halfway between. So halfway between, the teacher will kind of just notify the class, like this is a time for us to stretch. It's not a long time. It's not a loud time. It's just kind of like, okay, make sure your body's like alert, make sure you're twisting, make sure you're, getting that blood flowing everywhere and you're not just tensed and kind of hunched over your desk, so focused and working. We make sure that we're making sure everything's kind of moving and feeling good with their body. And what we want to make sure that we are really, really clear about for those families who have not experienced an FSA day before, that if your child is not feeling well on the actual testing days, there are makeup days, okay? And if your child is not feeling well on any of these days, it's absolutely okay for them to stay home. There is no reason to send them in. We have plenty of makeup days, and that we can take care of them on another day when they are feeling better. And just please do not worry about it if they wake up that morning and you can just tell that they are not at their best. So please just know that we can take care of them another day, and it will absolutely be perfectly fine. Okay. All right, Mr. Bryce.
So I titled this slide Test Wellness, but I'm going to name what we're actually talking about. We're talking about test anxiety, and it's lurking, and anxiety is okay. I always frame this with students. Anxiety means that you care about something and that it matters to you and you want to do a good job on it. We don't want it to get to the point where it is impacting their performance or they're feeling all sorts of ways about a piece of paper. We kind of have the context and the perspective on life to know that this test in third grade really, over the course of their entire life, it's not as big a deal as some students tend to make it. But for a lot of these 8 or 9-year-olds, this is kind of the iceberg that they've been dreading for maybe a year or two. And so understanding that mentality, that they don't have that perspective or that context, can really help us understand why they are feeling so worried, so anxious about a test. And so I wanted to give some general guidelines of things that you can do that would help your student explain how they're feeling, help you hear what they're saying, and also maybe give them some very basic skills to help them get through this and other tests that we have. The most important thing, asking them how they feel. We're not asking them how they feel to change their mind or to fix their feeling or anything like that. We just want to hear how they feel. If they feel scared, we want to hear that. Even if it's something that we know isn't true, of, hey, mom, I'm really scared about this test because if I fail, I'm going to get kicked out of school. We know that that's not true, and we can dispute the kicked out of school part, but we shouldn't try to make the person not feel scared. We can give them confidence and hope that, I know you're scared, I'm going to help you with this. Your teachers are going to help you with this. The counselor is going to help you with this, that they're not alone in this feeling and that we really care about how they feel. But usually when you try to change someone's feeling, it doesn't go that well. They're just going to feel that thing even more. So asking how they feel, checking in while you're doing practice, after practices, the days that we do the simulations at school, if you ask them when they get home, hey, how did it feel to do the test, and really kind of hear what they're saying. Using the same strategies used at school really helps. The more repetition, the more kind of confidence they will have, the more familiarity they will have with the material. And as we get more confident and more familiar, we have less to worry about because we kind of know the thing. And so that helps your anxiety go down too. And so if they're using strategies at school, try to use those at home too. Projecting confidence is important. I know some of you may be worried too, and that's okay. Again, we're not trying to say like, hey, I'm not worried about this at all, but we want to project confidence that, hey, we can get through this. We can figure it out. It's going to be okay. So projecting that confidence is important, especially as opposed to the opposite of saying, hey, I'm really worried about this, or hey, I'm really anxious about this, or this is going to be really bad. They're looking to you kind of for their cues. And so if you're very worried about it, they may feel worried about it. Giving specific praise is very important. Even if they're struggling, praising something, anything can help maybe start the ball rolling toward them getting some momentum and getting some more confidence. So I really I like how hard you are trying. Feels like they can't get any question right. It feels like every passage is too long and none of the answers make any sense. But if they're trying hard and acknowledging that you're seeing that effort can be really, really important and help them feel like they're not just completely lost, that, hey, I'm trying. Once I figure this out, all that effort is going to pay off and I'm going to kind of go through this. You've gotten really good at comprehension. This is big too, because starting off, they may have kind of a lower answer score, but as they get more practice and more kind of familiarity with the test, those scores are going to go up. And so recognizing that growth, recognizing those gains are really important, because they're going to feel like they've accomplished something just by doing practice tests before they even take the test. Helping them feel good on test day is really important. Angie talked about this a little bit. Test day is not the day to skip breakfast, whether they get it at school or whether they get it at home. Try to get breakfast. Sleep is really, really important. If the smoke alarm goes off at 1 a.m., that may be a sign to, hey, maybe we shouldn't do it this day. Maybe we should stay home. But good night's sleep, breakfast, and comfortable clothes. I feel comfortable when I can wear comfortable clothes. Test day is also probably not the day to pick a fight over, hey, you shouldn't wear those shoes or something like that. Let your student feel comfortable. Let them feel kind of confident in their abilities and what they can do. Debriefing after the test is really important. And this can work again for the simulations or other practices. Ask them how they're feeling after they've finished maybe 5 practice problems at home. If you can compare that with how they feel before, that's another thing that you can praise. They're nervous before they do 5 practice problems. After they do 5 practice problems, they're not feeling as nervous. You can praise that. Wow, after 5 problems, you've already felt a lot better about it. Imagine how you'll feel by the time the test comes. Something as simple as that can really help them kind of recontextualize their feelings as, yes, I'm feeling this now, but I don't have to feel this way the entire time up until and including the test. And finally, unconditional love. The anxiety that really kind of shuts down kids and makes them really worried comes from, it's an irrational belief, but a belief nonetheless that if I don't do good on this test, or if I don't live up to what the expectations are, it means that my parents don't love me, or it means that, hey, I'm not good enough, or I'm not worthy of any sort of love. And so showing them that unconditional love, doubling down on it, tripling down on it, can really help them feel that, hey, I want to do the best I can on this. I want to prepare and I want to practice hard. But at the end of the day, I don't have to worry about the people in my life caring about me. They don't care what my score is. They want me to do good, but they're going to love me no matter what. And that can really help kind of put some of those really, really basic fears at ease. I also want to add, if you have a student who's struggling, or if they're worried, or if they're anxious, please reach out, send me an email. I would love to bounce ideas, hear what you're thinking, hear what you're saying. I can help them out at school. And it's nice for me to kind of have a list of the kids who maybe need a little extra pick me up on testing days, or some extra check-ins leading up to the test. So if you have any questions, or if you want some more specific help, please drop me an email. I would love to help you kind of work through this along with them.
All right, thank you, Mr. Bryce. So here come the slides on why people might be feeling the anxiety that Mr. Bryce was just talking through. So in the state of Florida, if a student does not score at least a level 2 on the reading FSA, so just that reading portion, meaning if they score a level 1 on that reading FSA, then they are mandatorily retained, unfortunately. Now, the state gives us 3 options, though, for a good cause promotion, meaning you can score a level 1 on the reading FSA, and if you meet these 3 criteria, one of these, then you can still be promoted to 4th grade. So I'm going to go through these 3 different options for good cause promotion. So if you score a level 1 on the reading FSA, but you have already been retained once in elementary school, and you have an IEP or a 504, that's an individualized educational plan, or a 504 accommodation plan, and those are for a demonstrated reading difficulty, then you will be granted good cause promotion and you can move on to 4th grade. Option 2 is if you score a level 1 on the reading FSA, but then you score in the 45th percentile or above on the Stanford 10, that's SAT 10, in the reading comprehension portion, then you are granted a good cause promotion and you get to move on to 4th grade. And then the third option, if you score that level 1 on that reading FSA, our teachers are keeping portfolios of all of the student work, and that's ongoing, and we can use a portfolio potentially for your student to be promoted for a good cause. Let's talk a little bit more about the Stanford 10. Angie, can you go to the next slide? There we go. The Stanford 10, or the SAT 10, you'll hear it referred to as, this is the most popular, you could say, option that we use when a student scores a level 1 on that reading portion of the FSA. They'll have 2 potential times to take the SAT 10, which is great. So the first time will be after the FSA. Every student, no matter if you've scored a level 1 or a level 5, we won't know what you've scored when you take this first FSA or retake this first SAT 10. After they take the FSA in April, so not on that same day, it's like a week or 2 after, everybody will take the Stanford 10, and you're looking for them to score a 45th percentile in comprehension. Then they'll be good cause promoted. Typically, we get the FSA scores after we get our SAT 10 scores back. So if your student is somebody whose data currently is looking like they're not meeting benchmarks and they could potentially get a 1 on that FSA, if we get that SAT 10 back and they've hit that 45th percentile, then when you get your FSA back, you can kind of breathe a little bit easier because you know that they've already made it with the SAT 10 score. They'll get a second time to take the SAT 10 if they attend our 3rd grade summer reading camp in Sale. The only students who will attend that summer reading camp are students who at that point, at the end of the school year, are not meeting their benchmarks, and they aren't making it on the Stanford 10 on that first time. You'll get an invitation to SAIL, and they'll be able to go to SAIL June 6th through 30th, 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And then at the end of SAIL, they'll be able to take the SAT 10 again. And same thing, we're looking for that 45th percentile in comprehension. The teachers are going to be having conferences with families in the next few weeks to go over any data for students who are not meeting their benchmarks and who might need to have that summer reading camp dates put on their calendar, just in case, just so you can start making sure that you have those times open for the summer. All right, Angie.
Okay.
Next slide. Okay, so here's just a recap, because that's a lot of information about this retention and good cause promotion. So if your child scores level 1 on that reading FSA, they'll have 3 chances to get promoted. They can do a 45th percentile on that spring administration of the SAT 10, or they could score the 45th percentile at the end of SAIL, that summer administration of the SAT 10, or they can reach the satisfactory with their benchmark portfolio. And again, this is not something that we use very often, but just to talk a little bit about it here, that there's evidence that all the benchmarks that are assessed on the FSA are met throughout the school year. And you have to reach a 70% or higher on all the benchmarks throughout the school year. And the work that the teachers will use is independent work, and all the passage they have to match the FSA standards and length and genre and complexity. There's lots of different pieces here for this benchmark portfolio. One thing I want to say before we end this, though, because these teachers aren't going to brag on themselves, but I'm going to brag on them very quickly. This 3rd grade team tends to, I think it's probably the past decade or so, they have some of the highest scores in the state of Florida. So even though there is all of this energy around mandatory retention and all of these things, these teachers are amazing, and they do amazing work with your students. And so if you have any questions or any concerns, please reach out to them, and they are going to be able to help you. And they're pretty much the experts in the state around this. So we're very lucky that we have them leading the charge with our students. All right, Ms. Flavin.
All right, thank you very much. So I did see 1 or 2 questions pop up. So yes, we will be sending home a digital copy of all of the slides you just saw, and also a paper copy of all the slides you just saw. Ms. Henderson will be putting this video onto YouTube, and we'll also share the link with all of the 3rd grade families to make sure everyone has access to what we just talked about. And of course, if you have another question that pops up, just please reach out to any of us, for any wondering that might pop into your head, especially once homework starts to come home, especially as we start to get closer to the actual FSA date. We've been doing this for quite some time, so we're pretty familiar with all of this. So let me just check the chat box one more time. Oh, well, yay, woohoo, thank you.
Just compliments.
Yes, well, thank you for being such amazing families and sharing your children with us, because they make the day just go by wonderfully, and we adore them. They're amazing, and we look forward to taking them on this FSA adventure. So please reach out. We're happy to help you through this time. So we'll see you on the flip side. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful night, and good night.